cafe on Frenchman Street in the Faubourg Marigny in New Orleans. A ceiling fan churns, throwing dust into the eyes of an old painting of Madame Rose Macabre. A man dressed in a black Armani suit with a diamond-tipped cane pulls up a chair at the table where I'm writing. He excuses himself for interrupting and offers me a glass of sparkling water. "You want to twist a lemon with that?" he says. On his index finger, he wears a voodoo labor ring, indicating he's an intermediary, a guardian at the gate of the spiritual crossroads. A leather pouch hangs from his shoulder. I recall seeing him once presiding over a ceremony at the Louisiana Voodoo Spiritual Temple. He spoke about gris-gris amulets, charms, and dolls used by enslaved Africans to cast spells on their wicked owners. Stories emerged about drownings under mysterious circumstances. As disease and the child mortality rate increased, enslaved persons found comfort and solidarity in their rituals. He spoke about the powers of the voodoo queens and their influence on the city of New Orleans. He rambled on in English so onlookers and tourists could understand before switching back to Creole. I remember hearing something about a little queenie rising. Didn't make much sense at the time, but I stayed and I listened till it was over. "Ava's hurting," he says, folding his arms and leaning across the table. "It's unclear to her why you don't tell your wife. She says you'd be lying to yourself if you don't." He opens his pouch. Amulets and little charms spill out over the marble surface, his eyes burning like paprika on roasted almonds. "It would be unfair after all she's done for you." Directly behind his head, up against a large window, an overgrown banana tree bends from the weight of its fruit, its leaves yellow from stress. He moves his chair closer. I smell the fragrance of her lemon magnolia perfume in the fibers of his coat. "You know, her visa's running out," he says as he signals to the waitress for another glass. "She can't wait around here forever." I turn my head and look back at the painting of old Madame Rose, patron saint of this establishment, a former slave who saw opportunity despite all odds stacked against her. I take a moment to absorb this scene and all that's happened to me over the past year and wonder to myself, is this about us and a lifetime collaboration together, or about her visa? "Her homeland's turning into a dictatorship," he says, tapping second line syncopated rhythms with his shoes. "She goes back, she'll get squeezed. There's no need for a woman with her talent in a country like that. Here, she's the most sought-after tattoo artist in Crescent City. You know, my daughter uses her exclusively. She pays top dollar for her illustrations. If she goes back, her wild spirit and creative juices will be wrung out. Artists are always the first to get crushed when the walls cave in." The waitress drops another glass on the table. He picks up a slice of lemon and closes his large fist around it. "You want some of this?" he says, watching the juice drip slowly into his glass. I refuse his offer. "She makes you happy, right? She inspires your photography, right? Yesterday, I had some business in the quarter. Afterwards, I was walking up Decatur Street to get a poor boy and saw her unmistakable face hanging on the walls of your gallery. You were busy bullshitting with someone who just made a purchase, so you didn't see me. But those black and white portraits of her are so beautiful. I almost cried. The world's at your feet. This is your moment. And it's all because of little Gem Magnolia." His round eyes seem to dance when he mentions her other name. You know, she was left for dead by this guy who was doing bad stuff to her. She got a big scar to prove it. You must have touched it, I'm sure. He rolls up his jacket sleeve, exposing the underside of his wrist. Even convinced me to get a little one. The floorboards creak as he pushes his chair closer. You see, we learn from each other. This world ain't so bad if you just make some time. He looks up at the old photo, removes the ring from his finger, and lays it on the table. She's coming to us for dinner tonight. What'll I tell her?
It was midnight. The first time an inbound streetcar near Canal Street turned. We were heading uptown. At Common Street she hopped on. White blouse, covered in red ink stains, and her eyes flashing like carnival beads. We ride along St. Charles, under a canopy of live oak, past Louisiana, Napoleon, and Jefferson. Her arm brushed my shoulder. She rose to pull a cord of her desired stop. The buzzer still rang through my ears at South Carrollton, near the river. Dark and still.
I rise early, clouds around the Magnolia tree, like lemon perfume. I rethink the tense of my story. The past is so overrated. A bayou sunrise painted on her olive skin, tendrils of Spanish moss clinging to a bald cypress tree. The floodgates open. Bougainvillea creeping through wrought iron, interlaced with pink azaleas, exploding with the promise of spring. And like a blind man, gifted sight, I see her journey from the inside out. Look at the river, she says, her lips barely parting. A new story, rising. High tide near the levee. A little gem magnolia offering rare midnight bloom. A creeping fog curls out of the river, sliding through alleyways and settling under street lamps. A river barge turns. A massive wake pools water near Decatur Street. I walk over worn cobblestones, gilded silver by moonlight, rubbed smooth by my desperate search for Ava.
Like white petals against bright green foliage. It's there, if you look. In winter, bud rots, leaving only memory of nocturnal fragrance.
Dust settles thick on my camera's lens. A year will go by, and another.
I walk along Chapitola Street to the end of the river and listen to the rhythmic sounds of waves against levee walls. And I feel a magnetic pull. Mystery surrounds me. Like a creeping silt in the basement. The smell of jasmine is sweet.
In the distance, a massive ship turns, unable to navigate through sediment. And I see Ava stumbling towards me. Her eyes peer through the dense fog.